Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Kate Tyrawski, who's our Director of Operations, and she's going to give you some more in-depth that will probably give some background. And we're going to use the time while she's talking to go through some of your questions, group them, and then we can wrap up with general questions. But obviously, if you have questions for Kate, please go ahead and put them in as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Casey. I'm going to try to go really fast so we have more time for questions. Like Casey said, I'm the Director of Operations here for the association. Just real quick, that's my contact info up there. I just want to highlight that I am not an expert in any way in any of these manners. I think just like y'all, we're just kind of thrown into the gauntlet to try to figure this out. So just wanted to share my experience in applying. We've applied for EIDL and we're getting ready to apply for PPP on Friday. So, and just a reminder, in case you have forgotten where you might find any information from the Small Business Administration, their website is right there, and they are rapidly updating it as much as they can. I know Lee and Gabe said it has kind of occasionally been crashing. I've experienced that as well, but hopefully they get it fortified and it's up there for good. So just a reminder, in case we had anyone jump on late, the EIDL loans are targeted low interest loans to those small businesses and nonprofits impacted by coronavirus. It's up to $2 million. The payback is up to 30 years as determined by the Small Business Administration for your own loan. And that interest rate for nonprofits is 2.75%. So the application process has changed very rapidly. We started talking about maybe doing this presentation last week, 7 days ago, and I went on to kind of gather some information and start thinking about how we would do a presentation like this. Then Thursday, their website was down. Friday, there was a completely different application process, which I created a presentation for. And then by Monday morning, when I went to do the association's application, it was another brand new one. So they've really streamlined it. It's really fast. If you haven't done it yet, I don't expect it will take you very long. So I can talk a lot, and I'm going to talk a lot about step one here because that's what I've done. So there's your website again, COVID-19relief.sba.gov is the direct link to the application. And there's 5 sections. Let me, currently, actually, let's show you on this slide. I don't know if you can read all that text. I know it's pretty tiny, but the estimated time for completing the entire application here is 2 hours and 10 minutes. Let's see here. But for me, it took me about 10 minutes, and that was with taking the screenshots that you're going to see here. I'm not sure if there's more coming from the SBA later through verification that's going to add more time on. We applied on Monday, and we haven't gotten any requests for additional information yet. So we'll see, but it was really fast and really easy. And very streamlined, like they say there. Okay, so Lee and Gabe showed this as well. You're gonna only choose one of these items. So the association's a 501c3, so we obviously chose that one. If any of our corporate members are listening, feel free to check whichever for-profit option works for you there. And then these disclosures at the end of the page, you do need to be able to check all of them. I saw that question in the Q&A. You need to check all of these or you won't be able to continue through the application. Then they're just going to ask you for some business information. I saw this in the Q&A as well, that it used to be if you selected the nonprofit, is the applicant a nonprofit organization, it would change the questions. As of Monday, it was not doing that. So we do have those questions about ownership. Is obviously normally a for-profit enterprise, but we'll get to that. So yep, just normal, super easy. I did want to point out 2 things. You've got your required questions here. They're red in the front and you have the red asterisks. Once you have filled those out to their liking, it will turn green, so you know you're on the right track. I wanted to highlight as well that you have the cost of goods sold for the 12-month period prior to the date of the disaster, which they mark as January 31st, 2020. But for any of the nonprofits listening, you also want to make sure that you're entering in 2 boxes below here the nonprofit costs of operation for those 12 months. And just even more business information, just like that. This is another slide I wanted to highlight. The business activity box there, there's no garden, there's no museum, there's no nonprofit classification there. So from other gardens, I've gotten a couple of options that they've chosen. They've done educational, and then under detailed business activity said none of the below. They've done agricultural, none of the below, personal services, membership, annual memberships. So just do what feels best for you and most accurate. And then we get to business owners. Like Gabe and Lee said, it's probably best to do your executive director or CEO, president. I would check your bylaws just in case you have any provisions about who on your staff or board is able to make these kind of loan requests, and make sure that you're putting someone that is able to actually do that. And then this is going to be the personal information of that owner. So you will need their social security, their birthday, their place of birth, and their personal address. And then we get to the fun part. Additional information, you haven't committed crimes, basically. You will need to select no on all of those to move forward. Additional information as well, if anyone, oh, sorry, I just saw a chat come in. Miscellaneous services is another good option for business activity. Really just go with whatever feels most accurate to y'all. If anyone assisted you in completing this application, if you have a accounting firm that you work with or a bookkeeper, and they maybe helped you accumulate some information and you want to make sure that they're able to talk later to the SBA, I would put them here. I also, if you have another staff member that's helping, just to make sure that someone's able to talk to the SBA in addition to the person that you put. And then here we go with that advance option Lee and Gabe talked about. If you select this, they are telling you that that $10,000 will be deposited into your account within 3 business days. So if you're having cash flow issues right now, that's probably a nice option for you. And even if your EIDL application is denied, that advance is actually not subject to repayment. Like Lee and Gabe said, it does affect your PPP forgiveness amount. It's subtracted from that total. And then very important, obviously, to make sure that your account number and routing number to your bank account are correct, because you don't want them to deposit that money to any other account. Then you have to do a certification. Make sure you read it, because you are under penalty of perjury if you are untrue there. And then the easiest step of all, maybe if I can get my slide to advance, ta-da, just like that, 5 easy steps, you're all done. You're gonna get an application number. They don't email that number to you, so make sure that you print it out, you screenshot it, email it to yourself, you're writing it down, just make sure you have the number saved. They've been saying 3 weeks on their website to process these applications, but with so many people applying, I'm not personally sure they're going to be able to keep up with that. But they have been ramping up staffing, so we'll see what happens. And then step 2, I just pulled this information from their website. I'm actually, I'm going to go through it really quickly. I'm not sure that it's technically going to be the same way that they do it for this program, just because there's so many people applying. It's such an unprecedented event. But someone will estimate your total loss and determine your eligibility. You'll be assigned a loan officer through the SBA to work with you to provide all the necessary information they might need. And then a loan officer is going to contact you to discuss what the amount they have come up with is and your next steps to get it. And then the best step, step 3, you got your loan. So they're going to send loan closing documents for your signature. And as soon as you get those back, the initial disbursement on the EIDL should be made within 5 days. Again, that's not including that advance. If you select that, that should be within 3 days. You'll have a case manager assigned who is going to help to make sure that you're meeting all the loan requirements and schedule the additional disbursements to the total amount of the loan. And then just a note, again, I'm not sure if this is actually going to apply to EIDL, but I did see this on their website for other disaster loans, that if you suffer additional injury, your loan may be adjusted, increased, or if you are getting some other payments in like insurance or other payments. I saw civil lawsuits, for example, related to the economic disaster. It might be adjusted down, but more on that. The association is really monitoring this very closely. So hopefully we have a lot more information for you as we all kind of go through steps 2 and step 3 together as well. And then Paycheck Protection Program, I saw this question in the chat a lot. It is via lending institutions. It's not directly through the Small Business Administration. So there are some partners, lending partners that the SBA has partnered with previously under their 7A loan program. And I'll have a slide up shortly about their, actually, let me just, Lee and Gabe went over all that already. Let me try to speed up a little bit here. Again, Paycheck Protection Program is going to forgive a portion of your loans. I just wanted to show everyone that application form that came out that Lee and Gabe said their bank had told them not to use. So again, talk to your bank, talk to your lending institution if you have one. I'll show you on the next slide some places to look if you don't have one. But it's a very simple and short application form. The lending institution will probably want more information from you. But hopefully it's pretty easy for you all to get started. And I'm going to leave these up. We're also going to have these slides and the recordings available relatively shortly, as soon as we can have them tomorrow morning. So if you don't have time to write this down, we'll have it for you, we promise. And you can find lenders there on their website. SBA.gov has a lot of things that you need, and the COVID-19 disaster relief is splashed everywhere on it. So you should be really able to find it. And then real fast here, there I am again, not an expert, but I'm happy to try to help you with questions and comments and just commiserate with you about the experience. So I think I tried to go as fast as I could. Casey, were there any questions specifically for me?
I think there was, Kate, first of all, fantastic job. Thank you. And second of all, I would say that we do have a couple of questions that are just for Kate. But we also, I know we were scheduled to end at 5. For those of you who do want to ask some more specific questions, don't feel like your question was answered, I think we can go probably 5 or 10 minutes over. But at 5 o'clock, I'll have a couple of closing words, but we do have time for 1 or 2 questions before that moment. So there was a question about applying for the, and maybe Kate, you can answer this. There's a difference between the two, COGS and the total. I just used the gift shop inventory for COGS and the total expense for the other. Does that sound about right for you?
That's how I understood it.
Okay. And then is the person that you enter in also the personal guarantee? So how do you know if you're over that $200,000 threshold?
So I actually do not know the answer to that. I would say I would plan on the person entering in is probably going to be the person you want to do the personal guarantee. They might give you the option later. Oh, you know what? I'm also going to make sure that we send out, there's SBA has some customer service numbers and emails. I'll be sure to make sure that we share that. So questions like that can be answered there as well. But I would plan on your terminal decision maker, who's probably the person that you would have give that personal guarantee. If you've ever had to do that for your nonprofit, that's the person I would choose.
All right. Okay, Richard, if you want to switch us back over to the agenda slide for a minute, and then we'll go back to Q&A. I just want to give kind of a quick wrap up. Today's presentation was very much geared toward us as museum sector business institutions, and what forms of relief are immediately there. I know that we didn't necessarily get to some of the questions that are out there about NEH, NEA, and IMLS. And those are fairly deliberate because I think that a lot of those answers are still outstanding as those agencies wrap their hands around this and determine how they're going to get some of their funding out. For example, there was a question about digital inclusion and what the digital inclusion directive is in the IMLS portion. And I can tell you that IMLS has some guidance that it received specifically as part of the CARES Act that they needed to keep in regarding that. But they're looking to, say, bridge the digital divide in areas that are hard hit by COVID-19 and yet have places where digital access for all is challenged. Those two things, I think you can agree, sort of run a little counter to each other in immediate interpretation, but that's the type of thing that they're going through right now. My closing thoughts are these. So we've had a really, really good series of presentations. We still have a few questions and answers that are out there. This is where certainly by your experience, which we want to hear about, we're going to encourage you to definitely work with your lender if you're going for PPP on the exact answers to those questions. We have to play the waiting game for grants. We've given you a lot of our interpretation. We know we have a couple things to get back to you on. We're interested, if you have questions after this presentation, please give them to info@publicgardens.org, and we can do our best to answer them and post the answers on our COVID-19 resource page. We are not the only organization that is offering a session like this week. There's a great one that, say, AAM is offering on Friday that comes from a slightly different perspective. And again, as museum sector business association CEOs, we're very interested in getting you all the information that you need. We were focusing more on 501c3 nonprofits and gardens because that's obviously who I care about the most and is the most impacted the majority of our membership in the American Public Gardens Association. But we do know that several of you work for public-private partnerships and other things, and we want to give you the information that you can best give as well. The closing thought is also this. Going forward, we will need your help, particularly on the advocacy side. Assuming there is a phase 4 or even a phase 5 stimulus bill, we need to make sure that we're getting the message across to our elected representatives that we are businesses and we are impacted, particularly those of us who are dependent on earned revenue, are severely impacted by this. We're not just sort of charitable nonprofits. So we will be getting back to you with specific asks, and many of those specific asks carry a time sensitivity to them when a bill is actively passing through legislation. So on that note, we're just after 5. We really appreciate it. We're going to extend Q&A for another couple of minutes, understanding that we might not get through everything, but I really, really, really want to thank you We have almost 200 people left, so it's clear that the information was well received today. So thank you very much, and we'll turn back to some Q&A now for another about 10 minutes. So Lee and Gabe, question about PPP. The expenditures that can be forgiven must be made within 8 weeks of receipt of the loan. And so can you explain how the 8-week period relates to the eligibility window? So how the eligibility window is there and how that relates to the expenditures that are being forgiven.
Hey Casey, it's Gabe. Lee had to hop off, and with it, he took his knowledge of that program. So I'm not as qualified as he would be to answer that question, but we can follow up with you after.
Sounds great. That would be terrific. Okay, and then another question. This question would be for you, Kate. If you're applying for PPP, what do you need to put for compensation from other sources received?
So what they're looking for there are things like any insurance payments you've maybe had related to this. They mention civil settlements. I don't think most of us have had time to sue anyone about this, but things like that. So for most people, I'm assuming those boxes should just be left empty.
And then another more general question. So in the payroll as it applies to severance for, this is sort of a sad one having to do with those that are or were in a termination phase. So would an employee that's soon to be terminated be included in the payroll calculation, and or would an employee that was currently receiving severance be included in the payroll calculation?
Casey, this is Gabe. I think I can address this one. So the PPP allows for payroll costs to include allowance for dismissal, among other things we talked about earlier. So I think that would be a qualifying payroll cost to include in the calculation.
Okay, and then Gabe, maybe you have a read on this. These sort of public-private partnerships, and we'll call them quasi-governmental entities, like a joint recreational district, would they be covered under PPP? And I forget the exact IRS code on those that was cited by one of our folks asking, and I'll see if I can find it.
So our understanding is, based on the description, is that that would be considered a public nonprofit, which was not provided for in the CARES Act, only private nonprofit.
Okay.
Public nonprofit out, private nonprofit in. Excuse me.
Sounds good. I'll field the next one, or you can as well. So we had a question about IMLS and what they mean by issuing grants to state. Is it one organization in a state, and will they disperse the funds that way? My knowledge of that is this: they are the library system has a much more robust bureaucratic structure that lends itself to that state-by-state distribution. But that, as far as I know, museums will not be. We do not have that structure, so they will not be. They don't have to follow that structure for museums. Another question, and Gabe, this might be one that you can field as well. So do we exclude both employer and employee FICA taxes when calculating payroll?
That is correct.
And then I want to go back. So one question that's been there for a long time, the payroll protection plan calculation of the loan amount yields the amount you're eligible to borrow. But is that the only amount you can borrow, or can you borrow an amount closer to your estimated forgivable loan amount? And so I think the answer to that question is, A, can I borrow beyond my maximum? And I think that answer is no, but could I borrow an amount that's estimated closer to 100% forgiveness? So meaning, can I ask for a smaller amount that might be 100% forgivable?
That's my understanding, but I'll need to follow up with you.
Okay. All right, and we have one or two more questions. This one I think is more geared toward Kate. The organization asking is not a private nonprofit, they're a public nonprofit. Do they need to check the first checkbox, business less than 500?
I believe so, but that's when we might want to get some more clarification on.
Correct, yeah, and if I remember correctly, Lee mentioned if you're a nonprofit, you should go for that. So last question has to do with the part where we're calculating FTEs. And so should we do part-time employees and aggregate them to FTEs? And what calculation or metric should we follow? And I'll field that one, and Kate or Gabe, you can chime in if you want. Yes, for certain provisions where you need to calculate an FTE, you would include all part-time employees and aggregate them up to FTEs. For the purposes of PPP, where there's what we think is a 500 head count, W-2 receiving individual employees, you would not be able to do that. But for other provisions where you're looking at overall payroll costs and you're trying to aggregate to FTEs, you would do that. There are different standards on what constitutes FTE calculations. Most states, but not all states, use a 40-hour-a-week standard or 2,080 hours per year, but some states still calculate at 35 hours per week. So we're just before our wrap-up time. I would say that if there's anything that we can do at the American Public Gardens Association, we're certainly happy to do so. We've really enjoyed, and on behalf of my fellow museum sector business CEOs for associations, we're glad to have you do this, and we just really feel for you in the sense that all of our businesses are suffering in the same hardships that you are. So we are your brothers and sisters and comrades in arms on this. So thank you for your attention today. We intend to do more of this type of thing as we go forward. And just again, from me to you, thank you very much for attending. Bye now.